was bright, like a very bright star, but I knew obviously it couldn't be a star unless it was a nova or something.
A skeptic might say, well, that's obviously Venus because it's the brightest star in the sky.
Well, it doesn't wash with me. Being an amateur astronomer, I knew exactly where Venus was, and it was not visible at that time.
Right.
And also know what it looks like through a telescope as well as a naked eye. So I then decided to get the binoculars quickly to have a more detailed look, because initially I thought it might be something like a supernova, which, you know, for an amateur astronomer that's quite an exciting, we're well overdue one in this galaxy. And so with the 7x50 binoculars, I looked at it and could see that it was a dumbbell shaped object. I thought, oh, this is intriguing, and I watched it for about 3 or 4 minutes with the binoculars, and then was debating whether or not I should try and grab a telescope. And as you know yourself, these things very rarely hang around. You know, even reaching for binoculars is usually too long. But in the end, you know, I thought, I'm not going to get any more information from these binoculars. I'm going to risk it. So off I went and dragged out the what I considered would be the most suitable telescope I have at that time, which is a short focus, wide field refractor, 80mm object lens, designed to give a wide field of view, but not particularly high magnification. And I figured at the time that I would probably be tracking a moving target, and this would be the best, you know.
And just to point out, you are on the air traffic flight path here.
Oh yes.
And it's very restricted airspace. Just tell us about that before you continue with your sighting.
Yes, we are literally 2 miles from the end of the north runway at Heathrow here in Langley, and it's restricted airspace because the planes are either taking off over here or landing depending on the wind direction. We also have the main air corridor over the country going north, where traffic merges from the continent and wherever and swings northwards, and they're high-flying aircraft which are a very common sight, and you know, you can't mistake them for anything, which is one of the things I noticed this particular time, was the complete absence of any of these aircraft flying around up there while this sighting was going on.
So you get your telescope out, would you put it in the back garden, or do you have it in the house?
Literally put it on the lawn and got it into position, picked a low-powered eyepiece and managed to find the object again. It had moved in between me getting the telescope, but I found it again, was able to focus on it and could see that it was actually, I don't know what it was.
So it was a glowing light the shape of a dumbbell, is that what you... It was,
I wouldn't say it was glowing or self-luminous or reflective. It was light, because obviously the sun was still in the sky. There were no colour variations, it was just this golden, orangey yellow.
And you've done a sketch for us, which we can put up on the screen. So just, how long did you observe it for with the telescope then?
For a further 5 or 6 minutes.
And there was some very strange sort of dynamics following that then, just to explain that.
Yes, well, no sooner had I centred it with the telescope that I observed a small sphere detach from underneath, hang there for a second or two, and that departed at amazing speed towards the east. A couple of seconds later it came back, hung there, and then off it went again, and I never saw it return.
Possible that it's some sort of drone or daughter craft that's come out of this main object, you think?
I think, you know, it gave that impression to me that this was something, you know. But shortly after that, the object itself vanished and appeared further to the west. Much to my amazement, I was able to pick it up again. And
so when you say vanished, you didn't actually see it move off in any particular direction?
No.
It went out?
It went out.
It went out, and then how many degrees further away was it then when it's reappeared?
In degrees, I would probably say about 3.5 degrees further west. And it moved a total of, I think, 4 times over the sighting, each by 3 or 4 degrees before it finally...
And can you estimate what that distance was that it moved in those 3 degrees? Have you got a feel for how far away it was?
No, I tend to be... I have no idea of the size of it, so trying to estimate how far away it was is very difficult without knowing its size. And the other way around, of course, you know, this is a very
so you wouldn't have any impression as to whether it was, let's say, bigger or smaller than a car?
Only by the fact that the few clouds that were up there were drifting past it, which obviously ruled out a balloon of some kind then, because you know, the clouds were happily going past while it just sat there. So given that it was obviously higher than the clouds, it must have been quite a distance off. It's just moving continuously to the west from here,
I see.
around 3 or 4 degrees at a time. But that's it really. It was very difficult to try and put any kind of...
Did you read about it in any newspapers or any local chat about it? You've not found anyone else?
Funnily enough, following your link to the other chap in Slough who had a similar thing, I paid my brother a visit as a fellow amateur astronomer. He lives over in Eton, who a couple of days after my sighting saw a bright light. This was in darkness. It was just a bright light to him, very bright light, but it behaved in exactly the same way. It hopped. It would wink out and appear, but this time moving more to the north from his position.
Yeah, I did a search on the internet after Peter gave me his sighting, and just to see if there'd been any similar sightings, and I did find one. I mean, we don't know the credibility of that particular sighting, but it was in Slough, and it was a very similar description, would you say? The object then that you've drawn here appears to have 3 spheres in it. And is that the impression that you got?
That's the impression.
Right. So perhaps in some orientations it would look like a dumbbell.
It was rotating. I could see that now and again it would rotate, and that would change the aspect of it. Like initially at first it was a dumbbell, but there seemed to be a disc shaped underneath to it.
Right, so like a disc with 3 spheres on it rotating.
Yeah, very
right. And what you sat and did these sketches when you were observing it?
It struck me as odd because I seemed to be looking at the top of it, if you can see from there, even though it was up in the sky, it seemed to be tilted, that I could see more to the top of it than what I considered would be the underneath.
Right.
Very, very bizarre.
Right. Did you hear any noise with it at all?
No noise.
You were probably a fair distance from it though.
I would say that. I mean, obviously the lack of aircraft noise was the thing that drew my attention.
And what's your own feeling as to what it might have been? Do you think it's a man-made thing? Well, your own personal feeling on that?
No, I don't believe it's man-made at all.
Right. Okay.
Not the way it just hung there.
Right. And have you got any plans to attach video equipment to any of your telescopes? Following
our emails, yes. I'm actually discussing with my 2 brothers an instrument package that hopefully we'll be able to show it in other wavelengths besides visible light.
Right.
So infrared, if there's any heat, if there's 2 exhaust, then it's obviously a jet.
Right.
Just to basically eliminate whatever we can. So we're currently working on this little thing. We've even given it a name. But
all right. In the hope that it's going to reappear.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it was good 2 years since I last saw anything weird up there. So
tell us about that. What you've seen previous.
That again, it was the aircraft movements that drew me to it, because obviously you get very familiar with how they move over here, and one thing you notice every now and again, one of them will turn very sharply, and you think, that's obviously felt in the cabin. Why has it done that? And I started to see if there was anything where it would have been, the aircraft. And this particular time there was an object which I could only describe as a globule of liquid metal. I mean, it was so shiny.
Right.
Again, through the binoculars, the 7x50s, I followed this as it came over my garden. It was very high up, moving to the south. And as it entered the airspace over Heathrow, it started to turn east. And lo and behold, in the field of view, 2 brown dots or objects came into the field of view. The whole lot turned and headed off east, and I lost sight of them.
Right.
as to what the two brown, I instantly thought at the time military, but when I thought about it afterwards, I was not so sure. You know, they're kind of.
So this object, do you think that may have been picked up by at the airport on the radar?
Well, I can only speculate. Obviously, the lack of the aircraft up there told me it was on somebody's radar. You know, they're vectoring aircraft away. Obviously, the pilots are not going to question. They're just going to turn as the traffic controllers tell them.
I see.
You know, and they'll just acknowledge that, Roger.
Right.
They won't say, you know, you avoid a flying saucer or something. You know, so they probably have no idea. But
you think there's maybe a very tiny group, or whoever is in charge of air traffic control is in the loop to a degree with regards unexplained objects, you think?
Oh, I believe that. Yeah, I believe that they're well aware of these things, and obviously pilot testimonies must be testimonies. So it must be one of the.
I had a military radar operator come to me not long ago at one of my talks, and he said, "Yeah, Richard, we see things fairly regular, and we're told to play them down and keep it to ourselves." So yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting subject for me. I've seen a lot of strange stuff up there, as I've said to you before. I'd like to know what they are, and you know, as to whether these people are in the loop or just simply don't want the hassle is another matter. But
yeah. All right, Peter. Well, thanks for giving me your account, and but thanks very much for talking to Richard Planet.
Thank you for having me, Richard.
That's all for tonight, and remember, believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. I'm Richard D. Hall. Good night. Oi!